Okay, so today we're going to be looking at some of my Neocaridina shrimp breeding colonies. Now, recently I've been making a ton of videos about my Neos, and that's because I'm just super excited about them. When I first set this room up, I was planning to breed a ton of fish, and as it's gone on, I've ended up breeding a ton of shrimp as well. I didn't really intend for this, but it just seems that my tap water is perfect for these shrimp, and I've ended up establishing quite a few really strong colonies of these little creatures. So I have some really good red shrimp, and I've got yellow shrimp, and I've got blue shrimp, and I think I've got some orange, but I'm colorblind, so I can't really tell the difference. For everyone who doesn't know, my name's Nick, and I run a big fish shop / breeding facility here in Brisbane, Australia. You guys can come and visit us, and we breed a ton of fish here. We also breed a ton of shrimp here, and I thought today what we'd do is start off by looking at some of the smaller colonies, some of the younger colonies, and then we can move on to some of the older ones. I can just kind of show you them and explain what's going on with each tank. So we'll start off with this tank here. Now, this is a former breeding colony that we harvested quite a lot of shrimp out of. These are red cherry shrimp, and this is what I'd expect when I start a colony. So at one stage, there would have been a couple hundred shrimp in here. You're going to see a colony later that would resemble what this used to look like about 6 months ago. We harvested pretty heavily out of this. I was selling fish wholesale for a while, and we started selling some shrimp wholesale, which I don't do anymore, and we would have taken 100 to 150 out of this tank at a time. Now keep in mind, these are all only 2-foot tanks, so they're not big at all. We pretty much took every single shrimp out of here, and I think a few babies were left over in here, and they've repopulated, and today what you can see is the bounce back of that repopulation. So these are a really resilient and an abundant species. So, I mean, you don't need a lot of shrimp to start a colony, you know, just a few babies have bounced back. But the reason I'm showing you this is, I think this is a good example of where a colony will start with shrimp. So you'll buy like 20 to 30, which is what I recommend when you start a shrimp colony, and you put them in a tank like this. What you can see in this colony is what I'd expect a shrimp colony to be at about the 30 to 50 day mark. So you got a few babies swimming around, some bigger adults, some juveniles, and it's just like a nice little healthy population that's gonna explode. In 2 or 3 months, this is gonna be chockers full of shrimp. So this is the first tank I wanted to show you guys. Let's move to a little bit more of an established colony. So the next tank I'm gonna show you is this orange sunkiss shrimp breeding tank. So this is probably the level up from the tank I just shown you. And I reckon this tank's at about the 80 to 90 day mark. So there's probably been 1 or 2 more breeding cycles of the females in here. For everyone who doesn't know, shrimp breed every 22 to 30 days, and there's a ton in here. The reason it's hard to see is because of all the plants, but there's a lot of little orange shrimp down the bottom. And yeah, this is like the level up. So I'm still not harvesting out of this tank because I kind of want this tank to hit like a critical mass where me harvesting out doesn't diminish the population and the breeding. Like I want it to hit like this little peak where there's just so many shrimp that even if I take some out, you know, 30 to 40 a week, it doesn't affect the colony whatsoever. So this is definitely the level up. Like I said, probably the 80 to 90 day range, maybe even 100 days, you can expect to see results like this. Even I think we started with about 20 shrimp in here as well. So yeah, I think the big difference with this tank compared to the other one is there's just more adults. So more adults means more breeding, and this tank in about a month to 2 months is going to be chockers. Like I reckon we can expect to see maybe double of what we're seeing in here now. So that's when I'll probably start to harvest. But yeah, this is a nice pretty tank. This is a really nice line of shrimp too. One of my favorites here in the shop. Okay, so this next tank, I just have to show you guys because it's so cool. So this is a blue dream shrimp breeding tank. Interestingly enough, I've had this line of shrimp for the last 3 years. I think it might even be nearly 4 years ago. So I got these when I moved into the last fish room, and I made a ton of money actually on these. I used to breed them and sell them to a shop all the time, and you know, I'd sell 30 a week. I took the line here and they've continued on just as good. There was a little bit of a hiccup where I introduced them to this water, and I think it just took them a few generations to kind of breed out the issues that they had with the adjustments, and now like the line's flawless. So they're really, really consistent. There's some really nice colors in here, but these are probably at about 60 days, I'd say. So, oh, that's not true. They might be a little bit older. They might be 80 days, but I definitely started with less in here. So I took these out of the zebra pleco breeding tank, which is next to me. I put like probably 5 or 6 in here just to keep the tank clean. And they've accidentally turned into a blue dream shrimp breeding tank, which I'm not going to complain about. These guys sell so much and they're so popular in the shop, so it's not a problem that they're in here and doing their thing. They're also in here with some pygmy cories, which is kind of interesting. These will probably set up at about the same time as those oranges, but in here you'll notice there's way less adults, and that's because we started with less shrimp. So you can see by starting with more shrimp, you're going to get to that critical mass quicker, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. If you can only afford 5 shrimp, you can still get away with it. And you're just going to have less adults at the same time as if you bought more shrimp, if that makes sense. So there's still heaps of adults in here, but there's just an abundance of babies along the whole floor. Blue dream shrimp are probably one of the coolest things. Like, I think 20 years ago, people probably couldn't imagine having blue shrimp, and nowadays they're so popular and they're so affordable. So yeah, another cool tank. But that's enough with the tiny colonies. I kind of want to show you guys one of the more epic colonies, like something to aspire to, well, something that I find really cool. I've got a couple of really nice red shrimp colonies, which I've shown you before, but we're going to go have a look at those. And I'll show you what I mean when the shrimp are just like doing their best. Okay, I've shown you guys this tank way too many times, but this is probably the biggest shrimp colony we have here. Sorry, buddy. Come sit here. Come sit here and be cute. This is probably the biggest shrimp colony we have here at the shop right now. In here, there might be 500 cherry shrimp in here. It's absolutely insane. Every single surface you see is covered with shrimp. And there's all this hornwort here that I threw up the top. I threw this in here like 2 weeks ago and it was covered in cyanobacteria. In a day, it was absolutely clean, polished clean. So that just goes to show you just how many shrimp are actually in here. I'm not too sure when I set this tank up, to be honest. I think this started as a little grow out tank about a year ago, and there would have been some shrimp in there, and I think they've just built up from that point. So I think this shrimp tank would be about a year old. I've got a little bit of an older one that we have been harvesting out of that's a little bit smaller, but probably a little bit nicer coloration. But this tank we're definitely ready to start harvesting out of. We haven't harvested out of this one yet, so that's why I wanted to show you just how many shrimp you can get in a tank in a year. So I'd say this tank's about a year old. If you started with, the more shrimp you start with, the quicker you're going to get to this point. But this is like kind of one of the biggest shrimp colonies I've ever had in my life. So yeah, something probably for you guys to be excited about. If you're starting to get shrimp, you can definitely get to this point within a year. You can get to it quicker if you buy more shrimp. So one of my favorite things to do in here is just to throw a piece of food in and just watch. It's honestly the most mesmerizing thing you can do. Like, probably one of the most enjoyable things in the hobby is watching shrimp eat. It's a weird thing that I like to do, but I throw a piece of bug buffet in there or some green cuisine in there. Yeah, just watch all the little shrimp go crazy. And the other thing too that I like to do is to try and feed. There's lots of little baby shrimp in here that you'll see. So you'll see like juveniles, adults, and babies, probably all in equal proportion. One of my favorite things to do to try and feed those babies is to crush both of the green cuisine and the bug buffet up into like a powder, gets all over the tank and feeds everyone, and everyone's happy. So yeah, this is like the critical mass sort of. I mean, there's going to be more shrimp in here the longer I leave it, and they don't really crash as long as I've got like some plants growing in there. The plants can buffer out all the waste produced by the shrimp in there. But let's take a look at probably the oldest shrimp colony I have at the moment, and let's just talk about that. It's just right here. Sorry, Sammy. Okay, so this tank here is a tank I've shown you guys way too many times too, but this is another red cherry shrimp tank. There's probably an equal amount of shrimp in here to the last tank, but this is a tank that I've had going for pretty much the whole time I think I've been here at the shop. I've never taken this tank down, and it's been quite a little success for me. So yeah, shrimp everywhere, all over the caves. There's peppermint bristlenose breeding colony in here too that have been breeding, which is kind of neat. But there's shrimp completely everywhere, all over every surface. And yeah, I guess the only difference with this tank compared to the other one is that we have harvested out of it. So once they reach this certain mass, like, we can continually take 20 to 30 shrimp out of here at a time because they produce that many at the same time. So like, it depends obviously how much you want to harvest, but if you say you want to make 50 shrimp a week, you just need to get the colony to the point where it's also topping up 50 shrimp a week, so you can take the skimmings, like the interest off the top of that loan. So yeah, I don't know, this is another cool tank, but I just thought this would be kind of like an interesting video to show you guys some of my favorite things that are going on in the room here at the moment. I've got lots of videos on my channel on how to breed shrimp, so maybe go back and watch those if you're interested. But I thought this would just be fascinating, get you to look at some B-roll, some shrimp, and maybe get inspired to go and start some shrimp colonies yourself. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video.